not afraid of any country, the most powerful nation in the contemporary world. How can one defeat the United States when their Navy and Air Force are both the strongest in the world and are not afraid to confront any country? Perhaps only aliens could defeat America. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the U.S. has become the strongest country in the world. In fact, even before the Soviet Union collapsed, the U.S. already led the world in both economy and military power. First of all, the total economic output of the United States is the largest in the world. Its annual defense budget is also the largest in the world. In recent years, it has reached between $700 and $900 billion, while Russia spends only about $50 to $60 billion per year. The strength of the U.S. military's equipment is also number one in the world. If it were truly a one-on-one confrontation, no country could be America's rival. So, how strong is the U.S. military really? Is it possible to defeat the United States? Now, let us find out. First, to defeat America, we must clearly understand the strength of its military. Regarding the Navy, this force is not only the strongest in the world, but also the strongest branch within the U.S. military. The U.S. Navy is responsible for managing all naval matters, from equipment and training to combat, and for maintaining a force capable of winning wars, preventing invasions, and ensuring freedom on the seas. Currently, the U.S. Navy has nearly 500,000 active duty and reserve personnel. Its combat force has reached the highest level in the world, with 280 warships and 4,000 aircraft, considered equivalent to the world's second-largest air force. Although today's number of warships is only a fraction of what it was at the end of World War II, when the U.S. had more than 10,000 warships, the strength of the U.S. Navy is still formidable. Since its founding, the U.S. Navy has participated in more than 200 wars worldwide, accounting for more than two-thirds of all U.S. military battles. In recent decades, the Navy has demonstrated its superior strength. Currently, the U.S. Navy has 7 fleets, from the 2nd to the 7th, plus the 10th fleet. The 7th fleet belongs to the Pacific Fleet, while the 2nd and 6th fleets are part of the Atlantic Fleet. Regarding the Navy, this force is not only the strongest in the world, but also the most powerful branch in the U.S. military. The U.S. Navy is responsible for managing all naval affairs, from training and equipment to combat operations, and maintaining a force capable of winning wars, deterring invasions, and ensuring freedom across the seas. Currently, the U.S. Navy has nearly 500,000 active and reserve personnel, and its combat force has reached the highest level in the world, with 280 warships and 4,000 aircraft, effectively making it the world's second-largest air force. Although the current number of warships is only a fraction compared to the end of World War II, when the U.S. had more than 10,000 warships, the strength of the U.S. Navy remains formidable. Since its establishment, the U.S. Navy has participated in more than 200 wars worldwide, accounting for over two-thirds of all U.S. military battles. In recent decades, the Navy has demonstrated overwhelming superiority. Currently, the U.S. Navy maintains 7 fleets, from the 2nd to the 7th and the 10th fleets. Among them, the 7th Fleet belongs to the Pacific Fleet, while the 2nd and 6th fleets are part of the Atlantic Fleet. The U.S. Navy possesses 10 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers and 1 Ford-class aircraft carrier, all nuclear-powered, each with a displacement of over 100,000 tons. Notably, the only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier not belonging to the U.S. Navy is the French Charles de Gaulle, with a full load displacement of 4,200 tons. The Ford-class aircraft carrier even reaches 112,000 tons. This power is truly terrifying. Currently, there are 11 aircraft carrier battle groups. In wartime, a fully deployed carrier battle group can cover an extensive area. The combat formation is typically centered on the aircraft carrier, with an inner defensive ring about 18.5 kilometers away and an outer ring about 92 kilometers away. Nuclear attack submarines can operate 110 kilometers ahead or farther. With 78 to 80 fighter jets aboard the carrier, the control range can extend up to 400 kilometers, while early warning aircraft can detect targets at distances of at least 600 kilometers. Thus, the defensive perimeter of a carrier battle group can extend 400 kilometers, with a strike range of over 1,000 kilometers. The Central Defense Area covers more than 500,000 kilometers, all under the absolute control of the U.S. Navy, prohibiting the presence of any enemy targets in the air, on the surface, or underwater. The strike zone can cover more than 3,000 kilometers. This means that just one carrier battle group is sufficient to confront or defeat the Navy of a medium-power country. This demonstrates that the U.S. Navy's strength is vastly superior to that of other nations. In addition, the U.S. Navy has the strongest submarine fleet in the world. All submarines in its service are nuclear-powered. Currently, there are a total of 69 nuclear submarines in operation, including 3 Seawolf-class attack submarines, 18 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, and 4 converted into cruise missile submarines. The U.S. Navy also fields 21 Virginia-class attack submarines and 27 Los Angeles-class attack submarines, all of which are advanced 3rd and 4th generation nuclear submarines. It should be noted that conventional submarines cannot compare to nuclear submarines in terms of overall performance. The U.S. abandoned conventional submarines 35 years ago. Although Russia's submarine fleet, comprising both nuclear and conventional types, can match the U.S. in numbers in terms of overall performance and technological sophistication, the Russian Navy falls short of the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy also operates amphibious assault ships in numbers and tonnage far exceeding those of other nations. In particular, these ships are much larger than small aircraft carriers, surpassing anything comparable by other countries with regional naval forces. Furthermore, the U.S. Navy possesses a powerful supply fleet, including dozens of large general-purpose supply ships, with a total displacement exceeding 1.5 million tons, capable of sustaining U.S. naval combat operations worldwide. Additionally, the warships that the U.S. Navy has placed into storage also have significant displacement. The U.S. has stored many retired aircraft carriers, warships, and nuclear submarines. After retirement, these vessels are not immediately scrapped, but are kept in temporary storage. Typically, these ships are no longer in service, but with minor repairs and refurbishment, they can be reactivated as combat-ready warships once again. Once reactivated, their combat power becomes formidable. According to reports from U.S. media, among the retired vessels, at least 30 destroyers and dozens of cruisers are in storage, and the actual number may be even higher. Among these stored warships, there are also 4 retired aircraft carriers of the U.S. Navy. A British expert has analyzed that these retired warships could easily equip the Navy of a major power. With just the strength of its Navy, the United States already has the capability to confront any single nation, or even multiple nations simultaneously. After discussing the power of the U.S. Navy and Air Force, let's now examine the U.S. Army. Although it receives less attention, it is still extremely powerful. The U.S. Army traces its origins to the Continental Army during the War of Independence, and it is the largest branch of the U.S. military. In 2010, the U.S. Army had 480,000 active duty soldiers, 336,000 National Guard troops, and 180,000 reservists, totaling 1,054,000 personnel. While this is not the largest in terms of manpower globally, in overall strength, the U.S. Army is certainly the most powerful. In the past, most people recognized American military power mainly through its Navy and Air Force, as these branches far outclassed those of other countries. For this reason, many tend to underestimate the U.S. Army, assuming it is only average. However, this assumption is completely wrong because the U.S. Army is also extremely strong. For example, a single U.S. Army Corps typically has about 50,000 soldiers, but is equipped with more than 150 main battle tanks, including the M1 Abrams, widely regarded as one of the best tanks in the world. In addition, a corps fields thousands of armored vehicles, self-propelled artillery, and logistical vehicles with the total number of assets exceeding 4,000. If that is not enough to demonstrate its strength, the number of helicopters will surely surprise you. A single corps can operate hundreds of attack helicopters, including the AH-64 Apache, the most powerful attack helicopter in the world. Whether in terms of manpower or equipment, the strength of U.S. Army Corps ranks at the top globally. It is no exaggeration to say that just one U.S. Army Corps, even without support from the Navy or Air Force, could easily defeat the military of a small nation. Currently, the U.S. Army has 6 corps, including the 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Corps. What we have mentioned so far reflects peacetime strength. In wartime, this power grows even greater. For instance, in the 2003 Iraq War, the U.S. 3rd Corps participated with more than 80,000 soldiers and over 40,000 combat vehicles. Upon withdrawal, the amount of weapons and equipment filled more than 80,000 containers, demonstrating its massive scale. Although the U.S. Navy and Air Force are extremely powerful, the U.S. Army is by no means inferior. It is simply that the prominence of the other 2 branches tends to overshadow it. A noteworthy point is that today's U.S. Army excels in rapid deployment and intervention capabilities, rather than focusing on traditional large-scale land wars. The only traditional land war the United States has ever fought was the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Therefore, if one defines army in the sense used by Russia, China, or European powers, the U.S. Army functions somewhat differently. Currently, the U.S. Army has no conscripts. It is entirely a professional force with extensive combat experience. Before the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, many ranked the Russian army as the 2nd or 3rd strongest in the world. However, when NATO supplied only a few dozen HIMARS rocket systems and M777 artillery pieces, Russian forces already struggled and suffered defeats. This demonstrates that if the Russian army were to face the U.S. Army with M1A2 Abrams tanks, HIMARS systems, and Apache helicopters, the outcome would be clear. Because under the support of the most advanced command and intelligence systems in the world, the technological gap between the U.S. and Russian armies spans not just 1 or 2 generations, but several. Compared to other militaries, U.S. Army equipment is simpler and more standardized. Today, key assets include the M1A2 Abrams tanks, M113 armored vehicles, M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, M270 rocket artillery, M109 self-propelled howitzers, and M777 towed artillery. This standardization provides major logistical advantages, ensuring reliability and sustainability. Among 197 countries in the world, the personal gear of U.S. soldiers is considered the best. A typical U.S. infantryman is equipped with body armor worth $3,000, a bulletproof helmet worth $700, protective clothing worth $200, $300, gloves and boots worth about $240, an M16 or M4 rifle worth $1,200, and a pistol worth $500. In addition, personal support gear such as binoculars, night vision devices, scopes, and other accessories can total up to $10,000. Soldiers also carry backpacks containing reconnaissance tools, first aid kits, GPS devices, biochemical weapon detector, communication equipment, and laser rangefinders. Altogether, the equipment for a standard infantry soldier is valued at around $35,000, equivalent to the cost of a car. If the soldier is in special forces, the total value of their gear can reach $200,000, $300,000, enough to buy a small house in the U.S. All of this is made possible by America's enormous defense budget. In 2023, the U.S. defense budget reached $916 billion, more than the combined total of the next 10 highest spending countries. Therefore, if one asks whether the U.S. Army is strong, the answer is yes, not only compared to other branches within the U.S. military, but especially when compared to the armies of other nations, where it remains overwhelmingly superior. After discussing the three major branches of the U.S. military, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, let us now examine the United States Marine Corps. The U.S. Marine Corps is an amphibious ground combat force and a special operational unit within the U.S. military. Its primary mission is to use the fleets of the U.S. Navy to rapidly reach crisis zones around the globe and carry out combat operations. The Marine Corps is an independent branch, equal in status to the U.S. Navy, both under the Department of the Navy. It has a total of 181,000 active duty personnel and 38,500 reservists, numbers equivalent to the entire military force of some nations, making it the largest Marine Corps in the world. They are equipped with a wide range of modern weapons, including F-35 fighter jets and MV-22 Osprey helicopters. For this reason, the Marine Corps is often referred to as America's Third Air Force and Second Army. Since its inception, the Marine Corps has continuously participated in major battlefields for decades, taking part in many famous battles such as Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima. Through these campaigns, the U.S. Marine Corps quickly became highly elite and established itself as an indispensable component of the U.S. military's independent branches. If war were to break out, the first question the U.S. president would ask after inquiring about the location of the aircraft carriers would be, "Where are the Marines?" This highlights the critical importance of the force. The Marine Corps not only possesses formidable individual and collective combat capabilities, but is also armed with state-of-the-art weaponry. In addition to the standard M16A4 and M4A1 rifles, the force fields heavy machine guns, naval artillery, grenade launchers, numerous tanks, and fighter aircraft, comparable to an upgraded version of Special Forces equipment. Furthermore, with the support of transport aircraft and aircraft carriers, the U.S. Marine Corps has a huge advantage in rapidly deploying forces to any global hotspot. Currently, the Marine Corps is divided into three main components: ground forces, aviation forces, and logistics forces. These three elements have clearly defined roles and work closely together. The ground forces include three Marine divisions, among the largest ground combat units in the world. The aviation forces primarily provide air support for both land and sea operations, protecting and assisting ground units. The logistics forces are responsible for supplying materials, ensuring that U.S. global military operations run smoothly. The Marine Corps is often used as a rapid reaction force, and it is the only branch in the U.S. military with authority above others, as most of its missions come directly from the President without congressional restrictions. During combat, it relies only on U.S. Navy warships and does not directly take orders from the Navy. All of this demonstrates that the U.S. Marine Corps is not only an elite fighting force, but also a uniquely important political and military tool for the United States in any international crisis. In fact, the United States Space Force was established earlier than most people think. It is the first new branch created since the Air Force became independent in 1947 and is one of the three major components under the Department of Defense. On December 20, 2019, the Space Force was officially designated as an independent service within the U.S. military. In terms of personnel, It is the leanest force within the Pentagon, with about 2,100 active duty members and 13,500 personnel transferred from the Air Force. The Space Force's primary mission is to organize, train, and equip to protect the interests of the United States and its allies in space, while providing space-based capabilities for joint operations. Among the 4 nations in the world that have space forces, the U.S. Space Force is the strongest. Currently, the Space Force manages the U.S. military's satellite warning systems. These include infrared satellites and multi-orbit early warning satellites. They are capable of detecting missile launches during the boost phase, mid-course, and re-entry. Notably, 2 high-orbit infrared satellites can provide long-term surveillance of military activities across the Northern Hemisphere. The main goal of this system is to detect intercontinental ballistic missile launches from mid and high latitudes, as well as from northern waters. Once the system is fully deployed, it will serve as America's primary early warning shield for decades to come. Furthermore, the U.S. military is developing a new generation of satellite warning systems capable of tracking not only ballistic missiles, but also surface-to-air, air-to-air, and even hypersonic missiles. Once operational, this system will significantly impact how nations conduct missile warfare. In recent years, the U.S. has also focused on developing high-orbit space combat capabilities, including the deployment of offensive and defensive satellites. According to U.S. media reports, America already possesses maneuverable spacecraft, small-scale space surveillance satellites, experimental offensive-defensive satellites, and orbital patrol satellites. These assets will undoubtedly pose significant threats to the satellites of other nations. In June 2022, the Space Force also established its own independent intelligence agency, known as the National Space Intelligence Center, NSIC. Its mission is to monitor and detect threats to America's space assets while providing intelligence on the movements and intentions of foreign space programs. In short, the U.S. Space Force represents a critical step forward, affirming America's ambition to dominate outer space, the battlefield of the future. After reviewing the full strength of the Navy, Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, and the Space Force, the ultimate question arises: can the United States be defeated? In theory, if all the nations of the world united together, there might be a chance to defeat the U.S. But in reality, this possibility is almost non-existent, especially when America possesses a vast nuclear arsenal. Apart from unrealistic scenarios, such as internal collapse or an alien invasion, the United States will remain the world's leading superpower throughout the 21st century. If you found this video valuable and insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming videos from High Global New Update. Your support is the greatest motivation, helping me keep the fire alive and continue sharing objective, profound perspectives. See you in the next video. Thank you, and goodbye.